I'm Don Pratt, host of a show here on Rogers TV where we get a perspective of York Regional Police in your community. Welcome to Policing York Region. Coming up, we're going to be speaking with Constable Phil Mapley from the Traffic Unit, and right now we have Superintendent Heidi Shellhorn and Inspector Angelo De Lorenzi, which make up the command team at 3 District. Welcome to the show.
Morning, Don.
Thanks for coming on. It's great to have you here. What can we talk about with 3 District?
We're happy to talk about overall crime and non-related calls for service within Georgina. We're also very anxious to talk to our community about a new staffing model that we will be experiencing in the very near future at 3 District, which will provide enhanced service to their community.
So you've had some changes at the front door at 3 District. Mm-hmm. Is that what we want to talk about?
Well, we could speak to our staffing deployment right now. We've, as you know, or maybe you may not know, but communities in Canada are seeing decreases in crime rates.
Right.
However, at the same time, costs for policing continue to increase. And it's important for community to realize that much of our costs that we incur are related to salaries and benefits for our members. So operationally, it leaves a very small window on realizing efficiencies. Ange and I at 3 District started examining our district in comparison to some of our peer communities and looking at what other police agencies do in terms of efficiencies. Also within the region, we've examined efficiencies at Witcher, Stouffville, community services, looking at actually how many members we have within those areas and asking the difficult questions. Is our public being served best with those members in those places? Within 3 District, we realized in short order that we could do better for our community. So we started looking at updating the service model, and I can ask Ange to speak to that.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, as police leaders, I think it's incumbent upon us to find alternative service deliveries, and that's exactly what we've done. Organizationally, what we have done in the past 3 years is we put together a peer group of astute members, and we call them the Patrol Innovation Team, otherwise known as the PIT Group. They looked for ways to improve upon our service delivery by, for example, the calls for service for 911, false 911 calls were out of whack. Officers were spending an absorbent amount of time going to these calls, and they found a way to enhance our delivery in our model in which we respond to those calls. And after the implementation of those changes, we saw a very, very distinct difference in the way we dealt with those calls. We also looked at alarms, false alarms. Officers were spending an absorbent amount of time doing that. And by charging the commercial premise owner a fee.
And that's going back some time, the alarms program, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I remember back even in the 90s when they made some changes to calls for service to the.
So those are the things that we had to look at. So by looking at collecting a different data for things such as how many members of the public were actually walking through the doors at after 11 o'clock at 3 District on a monthly basis, we found the numbers quite low. And if we looked at our 2014 and 16 to 16 business plan, members of the public and the community, they expect to see those cars on the road. They want to see that police presence in their neighborhoods.
Of course.
And what better way to redeploy an officer working on that desk out to the road at 11 o'clock so that we enhance our officer safety and our calls for service get that better attention with their visibility in the community as well.
So it's back to the conversation we were having of finding efficiencies within your organization.
So we also looked at the span of control of our supervision too, and we realized that at 3 District we were quite a bit lower. We had staff sergeants that were in charge of X amount of officers. We were down in the city of Vaughan, a busier district in Richmond Hill. They had many more officers. So we've redeployed 2 of those staff sergeants to our real-time operations center, which is the central pulse of operations now in the region, especially in the night hours when command staffs at the various districts aren't at their desk.
Right. Right.
So these are the service deliveries that we found. We are about to implement them in the near future, and we'll look at the implementation of it, and we'll look at this pilot for 6 months, and then we'll come back and we'll assess the key performance indicators.
I've seen you did a presentation to council. It seemed like it was very well received. We've also seen it in a couple of our local newspapers, and again, it seemed to have had positive reactions. What kind of reactions are you feeling to it?
It's interesting you should ask because, as you know, I went out on the weekend to see our Keswick volunteers at the
Yes,
home
at the
show.
Georgina Home Show, yeah.
Right. So as I was talking to some of the volunteers, I had a citizen approach me and say they'd recognized me from the presentation through Rogers of the council.
Right.
And they thought it made sense. They thought the model made sense. It realizes efficiencies. It puts that officer on the road into the communities where our community wants them. But one caveat was her mother had a question about the front desk. So what happens when a member of the public comes to the front desk after hours?
Right.
So in essence, what's happening, because people may be wondering, at 11 o'clock, unless there are people that require service within that lobby, we are going to lock the front door. The front desk operator will be going into a car and going into the community. They will still be available to respond to calls for service at the district should someone come to the front door. And there will be officers within the building. We still have the detective office there as well.
So the office itself is still working?
Absolutely.
Still people within the walls?
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
not necessarily at the front desk?
What we're doing, Don, is, and Ann said this, we're really looking at employing technology, levering technology
Makes perfect
to better serve the public. So we've done security enhancements. Just to give you an example, when someone comes to the front door, the outer part of the foyer, as soon as that door is opened, the front door will be unlocked. As soon as it's opened, one of the cameras from the front swivels to that individual. It goes live into our call center. Our call center is alerted that somebody is in the lobby or in the foyer.
Okay.
And there's also an intercom, which will enable two-way communications.
So they're having two-way voice communication?
Yes.
And communications can also see this individual in the vestibule?
Absolutely. In the event, and this has never happened in Georgina, in the event that someone is concerned for their safety, there is a button. They'll be able to lock themselves in that lobby, and we'll have an emergency response. So our intent is not to discontinue or disrupt service to our community. In fact, it really is about enhancing it. As we said earlier, the cost of policing continues to increase. Calls for service in terms of crime decrease.
Yes.
And we're hearing our public, we need to be more efficient with their tax dollar and ours. We live in the community as well, and we're very mindful of that.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, it does bring to light the efficiencies that you're looking for, and it's great to know that, you know, people that are leading our districts are looking for efficiencies. I mean, we're all taxpayers. Mm-hmm. We all like to see that that's something that's coming into play.
Right.
Right. And how about statistics for York Regional Police?
Well, I think you have a few.
We do have a slide.
Okay.
To bring up on the crime stats.
Okay, just as I just spoke to a few minutes ago, our calls for service in terms of crime is actually going down in Georgina. So that's a good note. It is a safe community, and we're very proud of that fact. And we'd like to take this opportunity.
That's a good thing to hear, that crime's actually going down.
It is, and you know, it's largely attributable to the community that we have as well. They let us know, and we ask that they let us know when, and it may seem insignificant to them at the time, break into their car or property stolen. It's important to us to know that, and we are more than happy to come out, send in a car, and investigate it. So please, don't ever think that that your calls for service are minimal to us.
You have to hear about it in order to act on it, right?
We do,
Yeah,
and
we do hear that from different areas of your organization, that if the police don't know, how do you act on it?
Absolutely, and we hear that often from our community, that they're aware of incidents, but they have not been reported to us. So we always ask, please report them to us.
Right.
But while the crime rate, our crimes are going down, we're seeing calls for service for non-crime related incidents going up.
So what would that mean, non-crime related incidents?
So we're seeing increases. We're being increasingly called upon to deal with people who may be having mental health issues.
Right.
So mental health apprehensions, missing persons have gone up 7.3% in Georgina, and that's time consuming.
Of course.
We take calls like that very seriously and resource them so that we locate people who are missing. But they are on the increase as well, and they're considered non-criminal.
Right. So, and as far as district to district crime rates, is it all pretty much level?
Well, I can say York Region is one of the safest communities in Canada.
Yes, we hear that a lot.
It's true. We're very proud of that.
It's a great thing to hear. It's a great
and Georgina within York Region is one of the safest communities, if not the safest community in York Region.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
And we're especially proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be. As far as staffing, we were talking deployment. We're going to have to wrap it up. We're going into commercial. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll see you right after this short commercial break.
It's early in the motorcycle riding season, but the weather is getting better, which means the motorcycles are back out on our roads. It's time for all of us that drive vehicles to pay extra attention that motorcycles are now out on the roads. We're asking everybody to double check your blind spots much more carefully as the motorcycles are out there. And if you are a rider, early on in the season, some things you need to be aware of. First of all, your skills might be a little bit rusty over the winter. We recommend that you go to an abandoned parking lot, do some turns, get the feel of the bike again, make sure everything is in proper working order mechanically before heading out onto the roads. After that, you got to watch out because on the roads, the street sweepers may not have been out yet. There may still be sand, salt, and other debris left over from the winter. Things you got to watch out for, as well as potholes. A lot of the roads crews haven't been out to fix potholes yet, so be extra careful of those. One other thing we want everyone to do is be as visible as possible. Make sure your full lighting system is on your motorcycle, and try and wear some sort of high visibility clothing. It's going to make it easier for everyone to see you out on the roads. We're hoping everyone has a safe riding season this summer and enjoy it out there.
Thank you for that message from York Regional Police. And sitting down with me now is Constable Phil Mapley, a traffic safety officer with York Regional Police. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Don.
Thank you very much for coming on. When you're talking traffic, I mean, we can go all over the map. I mean, we've talked about the RIDE program, Project Erase, commercial vehicle motor safety inspections. It's almost hard to know where to start. So where do you want to start?
Well, I guess we could start with the RIDE program, and
Yes.
it's a year-round thing that we do, 365 days a year. And most of the time we're looking at intelligent-led policing to decide where to set up the RIDE program. There's people obviously on the internet or Facebook or different areas that are saying...
This is a great video of the RIDE program playing right now.
Yeah, and what we're looking at is to try and find a place to set up that's going to be good and hopefully deter people from obviously getting in the car and driving.
I'm sure just the visibility of the RIDE truck itself and everything that's set up with it must have some impact.
Well, we hope it does. The whole idea, obviously, is to be visible, and hopefully people will make that decision that, you know what, it's better to get a cab or call a friend, or, you know, there's lots of different opportunities to do different things to get home safely if you choose to do it that way, right? So that's what we're looking to do, is just cut the numbers down and be safer on the roads.
So walk us through a night out with the RIDE truck. You've picked your location. You're setting up.
Well, what we'll do is we'll get our intelligence, decide where to set up, and then once we set up, we'll set some cones up. Usually we'll have 2 or 3 cars on either side. We'll have a chase car usually in case somebody decides to make a turn prior to getting to it. So we're pretty vigilant in making aware of our surroundings when we're set up. We're usually well lit up in a safe location that people can identify and see what we're doing through the evening.
And unfortunately, as much as I know the RIDE program is out there and you're doing other initiatives as well to get it off the roads, it's still quite a prevalent issue in York Region.
It's a concern still, yes, and you know it's only as good as what the people out there decide to do behind the wheel, and we're trying to get the numbers down, obviously, but that's based on what the public decides to do, not us ourselves. We can only educate so much. It's people making good, rational decisions when they decide to get behind the wheel of a car.
And unfortunately, there are those that are going to make the wrong decisions, right?
Yeah, and we've seen that in the media over and over again, and not just here in York Region, but across the province and across the country. So, you know, you can only do what you can, and we're trying to do the best to just get those numbers down.
And a similar campaign was the distracted driving? Distracted
driving is a very similar one. I myself have been doing presentations in all the high schools across York Region. We've covered most of them. We're trying to educate kids in grade 11 and 12 that are your G1, G2 licensed drivers to try and change the dynamics of how they think when they get behind the wheel of a car, especially with the technology that we have at our fingertips today.
Right, right. So some of the other initiatives that you have with the traffic?
We have the Erase program, which is eliminate racing.
Actually, we have a really good video of the Erase, if we can bring that up.
Sure.
That's an incredible video.
Yeah, so RACE stands for Eliminate Racing Activity on Streets Everywhere. It was something started back in 1998 by one of our staff sergeants, now Dave Mitchell, who you know, got together with a couple other police agencies and created this because of the dangers of it. And obviously, when you look at Universal Studios and some of the movies they've produced, it's certainly motivated kids to get cars and modify them and do these things on the streets. And unfortunately, again, we see statistics that cause some things that can't be changed in people's lives.
Yeah, I heard even as recently as this weekend there was another one that was going far over the speed limit.
Yes, I think it was about 171 in the 70 zone. So again, you know, without thinking, people do things that they don't look at the long-term consequences. They think at the moment or in the heat of the moment and not recognize, you know, what consequences can happen, not only in the legal aspect, but just even through insurance too, and what it affects for their future as they drive.
So what are some of the consequences from, I guess we call it stunt driving? Is that the right term?
Stunt driving, you're looking at your car being impounded for 7 days. You're obviously going to get a court date, and depending, I think it's a 500 minimum fine or 1,000. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head. I'm new to this unit, so I'm just learning some of the ropes.
Yeah,
and
of course.
any event, yeah, there's lots of different consequences. Careless driving, dangerous driving, depends on what the circumstances are surrounding what the officer sees at the time.
And so with the stunt driving, you're talking about implications for insurance.
Insurance. Most insurance companies, like anything, whether it's impaired or stunt driving or any type of motor vehicle type violations, insurance rates are going to increase. And it's not just for a year or so. You're looking at 3 to 5 years where your insurance rates will be affected and cost you more than what people think.
So not only is it a criminal offense, and you're gonna ride with that, but there's also a cost implication to it.
Yeah, there's other things. You know, an impaired driver, you're looking at an ignition lock in a vehicle. So you're looking.
So what does that mean, an ignition lock in a vehicle?
An ignition lock is where you have to blow into a device that's attached to your vehicle, and then it won't start if it senses any type of alcohol in your breath. So that being said, you know, there's another expense that's added that you have to pay for to be able to drive.
So you actually can't drive your own vehicle without
having an ignition lock, and you can't drive a vehicle that doesn't have that while you're on that part of the program.
You have that part of the suspension.
Correct.
So what other campaigns do we have going on within the traffic unit?
One of the bigger ones that I've been involved in is distracted driving.
Okay.
And distracted driving is one of those things that involves not just handheld devices, but we see people shaving, we see people putting on makeup, trying to
Personal grooming while you're driving.
Personal
Doesn't
grooming.
sound like the best idea in the world.
No, but it's a common occurrence, and I think sometimes people just, we're in too much of a rush to get somewhere, and we don't take the time to think what we should be doing before we get behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Okay.
And then the long-term consequences of some of those things, obviously, again, we read it. It's one of those things that you might get away with a few times over your...
Of course.
Whether you pick up a cell phone or whatever, but sooner or later it may catch up to you, and the consequences can be devastating to not only you, but other families that may be on the roadway.
Well, just this weekend, York Regional Police Volunteers hosted a table at the Georgina Home Show.
Yes.
And part of that, we did a distracted driving campaign along with Mad Canada as well, doing the impaired.
Right.
And we had a vehicle there that had been the result of distracted driving. And what a mess.
Yes.
It's incredible when you see what a catastrophic result you can have out of distracted driving.
Well, the thing too with it is, we're finding, Don, is, we talk about the cognitive side of driving, and it's your brain. We think we can multitask.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is, the brain actually, if we're multitasking or trying to what we call multitask, it can't really do two things at once. We can and we can't. We can walk and chew gum, right? Pretty good. But for those people, have you ever sat and had a conversation on your phone in front of a TV? Like you're missing either
it doesn't
one or the
work.
other. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no,
right?
it doesn't work.
And that's the example I try to use with people when you're driving. You're taking part of your function of your brain away from that main focus when you're in a vehicle, which is driving. And when you do that, you're missing things. So that change blindness, we're not seeing things that are happening in front of us.
Maybe sometimes people don't recognize just how much attention driving, or any event actually does require, right?
Yeah, it's exhausting at times, depending on the type of traffic you're in, and it causes stress. We see road rage. We see different things happening on the streets because people are short-fused with stress.
You had a great initiative come up a little while ago. Pledge to Ignore?
Pledge to Ignore
campaign. We have a
campaign.
video that we can run on the Pledge to Ignore
That'd be great.
campaign as well. And it sends a message across quite clearly,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Another great message. The Pledge to Ignore campaign, I mean, this is one of the few times that you can tell people that you can ignore your boss, you can ignore your friends.
Absolutely. We Pledge to Ignore started in June of 2015, and then we started in the schools doing the presentations, as I said earlier, to the grade 11 and 12s to try and change that. One of the problems I see on the road today is when you and I started driving and phones were introduced, it used to be a car phone, which was attached to it.
Yes.
And you couldn't take that car or phone out of the car, and then now we went to bag phones, and now today, what do we have? We have basically a mini computer in front of us at our fingertips.
Exactly, miniature computer.
And with that, people can't get too far away with it. I know that for my own kids, to say, hey, put that phone away for a day, it's not going to happen. And
That's a tough call.
it's a very tough call. And with us being groomed that way, it's harder for us. And what we're trying to do is target the teenage kids and say, hey, when you start driving, learn good habits here.
Yes.
The risks, you may get away with it 10, 15, 20 times, but sooner or later, that mistake may happen that eventually could cause you a lot of grief in many different ways.
Yeah. The fact is, one time you will get caught, right?
Sooner or later, and hopefully you're just caught with a fine and you're not looking at the consequences that we do see through advertisements where lives are lost, and you're living with that. Do you want to be that person that may have caused a crash and have to live with the devastation to other families and yourself that you're going to see?
And it's certainly not something you would expect to happen.
No.
But the statistics are very clear. It does happen.
It does happen. And when I talk to the kids, I ask them that. We don't wake up in the morning. I said, you wake up in the morning planning on getting in a car accident, whether, at a party or wherever you may be that evening, and hurting somebody else. We don't plan that. There's not the intention there, yet it happens.
Absolutely. And, another event that we're always looking at, too, is seatbelts.
Seatbelts is huge.
Seatbelts, right?
Very huge. It's funny, I was at a conference back in a couple of years ago, and one of the speakers there was talking about how seatbelts in the 70s was
Phil,
something
we're
new.
going to have to wrap up this part of the show.
Perfect.
And like I said before, with traffic, we could go on forever.
Yes, we can.
That wraps up this episode of Policing York Region. For more information on the show, rogerstv.com. For more information on York Regional Police, yrp.ca. It's been great having you. Look forward to seeing you again.